Hello everyone, it's time for an update on my tomatoes, peppers and aubergines and the couple of chilies that I'm growing this year. We'll have a look in here first and then we'll go into the test tunnel at the back where I can explain a little bit more in depth. But I wanted to have just 2 minutes to tell you about NPK. NPK is what dominates the feed that you'll feed them, whether you're using Tomerite, manure, comfrey, whatever you're using, they will all have NPK numbers attached to them. And N stands for nitrogen, and that's this stuff, your green growth. That's the way you can look at it. All these three things do more, but in general, the N is for nitrogen and for your green growth. Your P is for your phosphorus. That's what makes these flowers on these plants appear. It also helps to grow the roots of the plants, and it also helps the overall general health of the plants. The potassium is the fruiting or flowering stage of the plants, which is the K. Why it stands for K, I don't know. I did used to know, but I'm afraid I've long since forgotten, and I haven't got a book to hand to look at. But anyway, K stands for potassium. So it will take the bloom phase of this and produce the tomatoes and ripen them, or it will make your flowers bloom and go to full, full extent where you can pick them and use them or enjoy them. So I wanted to explain that because I'm going to go into a little bit of detail when we go into the back tunnel. But for now, let's have a quick look around here. I've got a pile of brassicas in here, and again, this is all green growth mostly with your brassicas. So again, it's your nitrogen feed in there. And a few peppers in here, not doing too badly, and a few more peppers over here. But with my main tomatoes in here, I've got this patch here. I've got Jersey Devils, Black Prince, and these with all the flowers on, and a few fruit, Ildi. This bed I'm treating like I've always treated my tomatoes. When I grow tomatoes, normally I'll either pile in a load of compost and well rotted manure, or if I haven't got anything to hand, I will use fertilizer, which is blood, fish and bone, and that's a balanced fertilizer, and it's normally 777 on the NPK. Over in this next bed, these are my Crimson Crush tomatoes, and these this year are grown slightly differently in that I'm using the biodigestate waste from an anaerobic digester, and this one is a bought one that I got from a farm down south. I think it was called Rocket, and that's a blended fertilizer in those 4 plants. And in those 4 plants there's one that's come from a local biodigester that a friend has kindly brought for me to use. They're both doing much the same. I think the blended one is slightly better, but they're doing okay. But the main thing is, and if I can find one, because I've recently taken them all out, here we go, is these side shoots on these plants. I know I go on about them a lot, but you'll see why in a minute. So there's the side shoot, and this side shoot, I'll whip it off. What I do with these is I plant them and grow them on. So down here at the base there are about 20 of them, and most of these are ready to be planted out, and they'll all be going in a small tunnel next week. So that's a brief recap of what we've got in here and a tiny understanding about NPK. Let's go into the test tunnel where the results are slightly better, shall we say. Now, if you've been around Greenside Up for a while now, and if you haven't, there's a big red button down there. Hit subscribe and you can subscribe to the channel. If you know anything about me, you know I love to do a test and find things out. I always want to push the boundaries. I always want to try something new and find out what works for me, and I'm no different this year. The whole of this tunnel, and this is 12 foot wide by 18 foot long, has been devoted to a test, probably the biggest test I've ever run. And the reason I wanted to do a test is because I've always believed that I should feed my tomatoes every day, and I've always done that. A week solution, I don't use what is recommended like on the Tomerite bottle, but I've always wanted to give them week feed every day, and that's always worked and paid me dividends. Well, recently, as some of you know from previous videos this year, I found this guy online. Well, actually Tony Smith did. He spoke to Tony and did an interview, and I found out that way. His name's Glenn Salters, and he's got an Instagram account as well, this Glenn Salter, and you should have a look at that, and I'll put a link underneath. Go and have a look at that, because you won't be disappointed. But he's someone who said he feeds every day, and that set alarm signals going off in here. Somebody does exactly the same. So I started to listen to him. Because he studied agriculture and agronomy, I think was the other thing he studied at university, and got the qualifications to work within the commercial sector, growing things like tomatoes and those sort of things. I really took notice of what he was saying, and about the feed and how these commercial growers feed their plants. And that's what I'm doing in here this year. I'm using a blended fertilizer that they use within the commercial sector. Anyway, that's called Master Blend, and it's available. It's not cheap. I won't lie to you, it's not cheap. But my aims there is to do it this year and maybe next year with the Master Blend, and then try to get organic fertilizers with the knowledge I gained from this. Try to get organic and cheap homemade fertilizers to do the same job and get the two to meet in the middle, so that in years to come I can get the same results from the commercial grown or the commercial method from a cheaper, more affordable solution that I can make myself. So that's the general emphasis. But we'll have a look at the plants in here now, and I can point a few things out. Now, the first thing I want to point out is this bed here, because this has got all the side shoots I was talking about in the other tunnel. These plants are 1 month and 1 day old from the moment I picked them off the Crimson Crush plants, planted them in the soil, and then after 10 days I dug them up from there and came and planted them in here. And look at these babies now. They've seen no other feed. They weren't even planted in compost or modules or anything like that. They were just planted straight into soil, and they've been using the commercial feed called Master Blend. I mean, look at the thickness of these stems. I mean, they're just absolutely charging away. They really are. And these plants are going to overtake the plants that are in the other tunnel very easily and very quickly. Now, on the other side of the tunnel, I've got more tomato plants. I think these might be black strawberry. I've actually got a fruit on there somewhere. Yeah, it's just in there. So these are going to be fruiting soon. Kind of scrappy looking plants, to be honest, but they're growing away well. This is another variety. I think it might be blue chocolate or something like that. They're now infamous. Everyone's growing them this year. Brad's Atomic Grape. I think first brought to the local internet to us here in the UK by Tony Smith. And this is a new variety called Barry's Crazy Cherry. New variety to me. And I think I sent a few of these plants over to Tony to grow as well. I have a few chilies here, a few chili plants. I've even got some chilies on down there, big ones and all. And then the rest are, I've got peppers there. They're doing quite well. And I've got some aubergine plants here. These are looking lovely. They're now covered in flower, so we'll be getting some fruits off them soon. Then there's another batch of peppers, followed by the last batch of aubergines. Now, what I wanted to show you is where I took the side shoot off the tomato plant, and you need to do that. All these have been side shooted yesterday and tied in, all these tomato plants. And all the peppers up here, and the chilies, they've all been tied into the stakes, and these aubergines. You can see these bare stems down here. That's because I've also taken the side shoots off those, which is what I'm going to do now over there, and just show you what to look out for and what to take away. So what I'm going to do with these plants is remove the side shoots. I also want to remove any of the leaves that are like this. They've been attacked, they're a bit peely-wally, they're not the green of the top growth. So remove those. And I also don't want any foliage touching the soil, because that's where I believe slugs start to climb up your plants, as well as up the stems. But I'll take all this stuff off the bottom, and if I can find one, and here's one, hopefully the camera's in focus enough that you can see it. Here is a side shoot, and here is another one here. These need to be taken off, in my opinion, because this growth detracts from that plant. I would rather have the growth that goes into that and go into that and make it a stronger, healthier plant. Later on in its life, I will let these grow, because you can see here there are little flower buds and they could be fruits. But right now I want to take these off so the plant grows bigger, stronger and healthier, to provide that growth later on and give me a better, stronger, healthier plant. So all this stuff is all excess and is not needed right now, but later on these side shoots I will allow to grow, because they will produce fruits. And then I have tied that one in already, as you can see, using the knot that were on the tips and tricks video I made the other day. You can see there's 4 or 5, 6 flowers on there already. That might even be a fruit starting, I don't know. There we go. So going back to the NPK I mentioned earlier, a standard tomato feed that you'll get off the shop in the garden centre is one that's known as Tomerite. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, and I think I'm right in saying that the NPK for Tomerite is 538. So it's quite a higher potassium, the number at the end, the number 8, is quite a high one to help with ripening your fruits. It's got some nitrogen in there to help your plants grow. It's quite low on the potassium, I think, to grow the overall health and vigour of the plants. But in combination, the 3 of those things work very well. And as I say, it's been a standard for many years. People think of tomato food in the UK, they think Tomerite. It does work, and it will ripen your fruit by the end of the year. But the master blend I'm using, whereas the Tomerite's 538, the master blend is 41838. It's really high in those last 2 numbers, and it's limiting the vegetative growth, which is the green growth, the nitrogen, because it's low on nitrogen. But overall production of the flowers and the health and vigor of the plants is increased, and then the ripening power and the speed of growth of those blooms into fruits and then onwards to ripening is much higher too, because it's a commercial blend and that's what they want. Now, I still don't quite understand why the 2 are so different, and why the normally available one from the garden centre is not as high as the commercial ones. Maybe that will start filtering through in a couple of years, who knows. But that's the difference between those 2 blends and what I'm using in here, and it's what I think is giving me quite startling results. I think all these plants look really healthy. The growth is fast, and the plants just look good with it. They look thick and stocky. The stems are nice and strong. The leaf colours are great. I know that some of these tomatoes at the front here look a little bit scrappy, but that's part of their growth anyway. That's how they grow. So I'm more than happy with what's going on with that. Later on this week, I've got the small tunnel to plant out and finish. I've got plants out there on the temporary benches, and all the side shoots you saw earlier in that big tunnel would be going in there, and I'm going to treat them a completely different way again. So I've got 2 sets of tomatoes in there that are growing in slightly different methods. The tomatoes in here, which is a test method, but in the small tunnel I'm going back to the old-fashioned way of using what I've been given a term for now is straight fertilizers. Now, we used to do this many years ago. Back in the 1970s, you could walk into most DIY shops and you could buy 4 ounces of blood meal, or I a pound of fish meal, and you would go and make your own fertilizers or feed the plants as you needed to. Well, that's what I'm going back to, and in the small tunnel with those side shoot plants is straight fertilizers, but used in a slightly different way, and in amounts that will mostly replicate the commercial growers, what they're doing with the master blend that I'm using in here, but again with a touch of finesse. So, but we'll go through that as we go through the season. So that's going to be very interesting, and that's going to be part of the way that it's going to be cheaper to use to get the same results as the master blend, which I've already said it is fairly pricey. The fertilizer I bought for in here was £32, so it's not cheap, but it's a method I wanted to try because it will give me a benchmark to work all my other future tests and moving forward with it, and give me the knowledge of what this can actually do, and then we could take that from there. So anyway, thanks for listening to me while I waffle on. I hope you enjoyed that tour, and it should be interesting to see, now that you've got the basics of what's going on in here, it should be interesting for you to see what the harvest is like in here at the end of the day, and in the other places in here as well. So make sure you don't miss that. Hit the big red subscribe button down there and join in. And if you want to, don't forget also that you can go to clips, which is the pair of scissors you'll see just underneath this video, and you can make a little clip and you can share it on your social media, or send the link to a clip to a friend or relative or whatever, to help promote the channel, because I am trying to achieve something which will make the viewing better for everyone. Anyway, that's it for today. Look after yourselves, please stay safe, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Ta-ra now.